What's up you guys, and welcome back to my channel. This video's gonna be a little bit different just because I really never do this sort of like casual vlog style, like conversational video. Usually it's a little bit more formal and a little bit more structured. I wanted just to have a quick conversation around dating anxiety, which is something that I definitely have felt in the past and I know you guys have as well. The reality is I don't really talk about this stuff that much on social media, partly because I like to keep that aspect of my personal life a little bit private, but I have learned so much because I have been through several really positive relationships, long-term, really healthy, and then a few like vile, toxic relationships. So I figured, you know what, let me just share 5 things that I have learned and I think helpful to share with anyone who has relationship anxiety that I talk about with my therapist a lot. I'm just gonna get it going. The first one is moving away from the things that feel cold and towards things that feel warm. And this isn't just restricted to like relationships. This is just like in life. There's that whole like concept of like follow your gut and like know your intuition. It's always like kind of abstract for me and I don't really get what that means. But the idea of moving away towards things that are warm and away from things that are cold just hits deeper for me. There was one relationship in particular that I was in where I was terribly anxious all the time. Psoriasis got worse. I wasn't sleeping at night. My tics were getting worse. Just like my body was like literally shutting down. My heart was like so bought into like the fantasy of it all. And my brain kept like justifying all this like really toxic behavior that I was seeing and like rationalizing it because it wanted it to work, you know? What I've learned is that you have to listen to your body, not your brain, not your heart. Move towards things that feel warm and away from things that feel cold. That's like the best way to describe it. So that's my first piece of advice. The second piece of advice that I have, identifying what your triggers are and then working on your response to those. A trigger is basically something that like really kind of like causes this involuntary response in you, like whether it's like you become really argumentative or maybe you kind of shut down, and it's kind of brought from like past traumatic relationships. One of my exes, for example, he was much more of like a fighter. Anytime he was triggered, he would fight, and he was just so angry all the time. I'm the opposite. I kind of like freeze. So there's fight, flight, freeze, and then fawn, which is like a narcissistic abuse term mostly. It is mostly freeze. So I will just kind of like, if I'm triggered, I kind of just shut off and should go inwards and I kind of just detach, which can be toxic in its own ways, right? Because I think some people can experience that as like inconsistent or like being hot and cold, and that's something I have to work on. What I've been doing is identifying, okay, what are the things that are triggering to me and becoming aware of those and then responding accordingly in the moment. One thing that you can do once you've identified these triggers is to breathe, to like take a moment, pause, and actually gain control and awareness of your breathing. You take more than 23,000 breaths in a given day, but the majority of those we're not actually aware of. And since breathing is mostly automatic, our random thoughts involuntarily make our breaths more shallow. This causes our nervous system to go into this fight or flight mode, right? So like anxious thought comes in, shallow breaths happen, fight or flight happens, and then our heart rate goes up, blood pressure might increase, cortisol levels, adrenaline going, not good stuff. Instead, what we want to do, and the science is really clear on this, that the longer of an exhale we can take, the more relaxed our nervous system will be in those moments that we've identified that we're being triggered. Always the easiest to do. There are some tools out there that will help. For example, this guy that I have around my neck, it's called The Shift from a company called Camuso. It helps facilitate this longer exhale, if you will. So it helps to send calming signals to the nerves. Like I'm already so much calmer after that, I swear. And I think it's kind of stylish. Link in my description box for a discount on this guy as well. Next thing is to actively choose which thoughts you're engaging with. Another fun little fact is that we have on average 50,000 thoughts in a given day, majority of which we don't have control over. They just kind of pop into our heads, right? I have found is that I cannot control the thoughts that come into my head, and I don't believe you can either. However, we can control the thoughts that we're actively choosing to engage with. Like, do we actually want to have a conversation about like this thought? Dwell on that or not? We don't have to. Say like you're dating someone and you're getting a lot of anxiety because this person hasn't texted you back, and then all of a sudden the thoughts start popping in your head like, oh my God, I'm not good enough. I'm a failure. I'm maybe ugly. I'm maybe weird. Maybe it was something that I said. You have the choice to then decide whether or not you want to actually like ruminate in that thought, or if you want to take that thought and say, okay, thought, cute, great, maybe I'll engage with you later, not right now. I'm going to hang you up in like a coat closet and I'm going to shut the door for now. Okay. You can do that. You do have control over that, which is really cool. I'm not always the best at it, but I think I'm getting a little bit better. Next thing is people pleasing or boundary setting. Something that I have talked about before on this channel, but it has been such a historic problem for me. I think I'm getting much better at it, but like I was the type of person who like just really freaking hated if somebody didn't like me. It made me so uncomfortable. I hated conflict, and so I would do anything and everything to avoid it. And what would end up happening is, you know, let's say I'm like with someone in a relationship and like they do something that really bothers me, but I kind of bite my tongue. I'm like, oh, it's not worth the fight, Sam. Choose your battles. I would end up kind of harboring this resentment internally, which would then come out in like a probably more negative way later down the line. You don't want to do that. People pleasing is ultimately abandoning yourself. I was so bad with it to the point where I met someone new and like they called me by the wrong name. I just wouldn't even like I wouldn't even correct them because I didn't want them to feel embarrassed. Like, not good. And the final thing I want to talk about is this idea of you owning your own reality and you owning your own identity of yourself. Only you can own that. You are the author of that. Nobody else. To be vulnerable with you about my own personal examples here, I think that I 100% in the past have turned externally, whether to like a romantic partner or even online to you guys, comment sections for like validation, to like tell me, yes, Sam, this is you. This is who you are. You're this good stand-up guy and who does XYZ and blah, 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 blah. It's a slippery slope. The problem is that if you give the power to others to tell you who you are, those others may not be there. It may not be a permanent thing, unfortunately. It's just the reality of how life works. Then what are you left with? You're kind of like a shell of a person if you don't have an identity picked out for you. The world will choose it for you. Beauty is that only you hold the key to the ultimate truth of like who you actually are. The rest is just noise. I hope that was helpful. I hope this was insightful. Again, if you want to check out The Shift, you can check out the link in my bio for a discount code. Comment down below if there's anything else you thought was interesting. I would love to hear your perspectives or any other pieces of advice that you guys have. Share it with a friend. Like this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Ciao, nos vemos.